Today we're going to start something that I've been putting off for a long while now, and that is ripping this rear wall out and redoing it. Several years ago, it leaked at both these top corners up here. Once it leaks down into here, there's really no good way to dry it out. They use fiberglass insulation, which absorbs the water just like a sponge and just stays in there. I started realizing something was wrong when you can see how the outer skin here started bubbling up. It actually pulled away from that window, and I've recaulked that window a couple of times because it's constantly moving. When I realized it was leaking, I came into this back compartment right here and ripped this paneling out. That fiberglass insulation was soaking wet. Also, the floor was rotted out here, so I've already replaced this floor with some new plywood here, so this is good and solid. And I would occasionally from time to time come and check to make sure this wasn't getting wet anymore. I have another video where I clean the roof and put this Eternabond tape on all the edges. I'll put a link to that in the description. As I said in that video, I didn't come all the way to the back because I knew I would have to tear this wall out at some point. The way this wall is built is it's like a 2x2 wooden stud wall. They put fiberglass insulation between the studs. Then they take and fasten a thick piece of cardboard to it basically. And then they glue this outer fiberglass skin to it. Like I said, the problem is once you get water down in that wall and realize that you got a problem, it's too late. I'd be willing to say that 95% of the Keystone Sprinter fifth wheels of this style have leaked or are leaking into the back wall. To get this to stop leaking, first of all, I caulked the top corners up there as you saw on the roof. I pulled out that big light and the tail lights and actually foamed with great stuff into the holes because they have gaping holes where the wires go in from these lights. I also have had to caulk around that window at least twice because the fiberglass keeps pulling away from it. I also siliconed around all the mounting brackets for the ladder, and that finally stopped it. It's been stopped now for a couple of years. You can see the great stuff I sprayed in there to stop these things from leaking. Plywood's probably rotting under here too. I really don't think it's ever leaked around these. The leak was right here. It holds water right here in this corner, and all the water from the roof runs to these two lower corners. And there it is. Those aren't doing anything, and they're also very rusty. The light was full of water. There's one very important thing in this project that I got to be careful of, and that's not to break this back panel right here. I know it's going to be really thin, it's probably fairly brittle, so I've got to come up with a way to support it up there. I'm thinking about putting a 2x4 up there and clamping the top of it with some clamps to that 2x4, and then using my tractor to just kind of hold this thing up in a sheet, and then I can back away and lay it down. Yeah, I don't want to break that, because if I break that, there's no telling what it would cost to replace it, nor how long it would take to get it. I put most of this on here over the years because once it starts leaking and the plywood starts rotting, this becomes a low spot, which holds more water, causes it to sag more. All these screws are in at some weird angle too. I mean, like at a 45-degree dip pointing down. Okay, I've got the board fastened to the top of the fiberglass panel here with some clamps. I've got a strap with a hook on it attached to that 2x4. I've got my tractor ready with a 2x4 on there and a strap on the end of it. That gives me the height that I need. I'm thinking this shouldn't be all that heavy. I think this should work out fine, but here we go. Let's rock and roll. Well, I got it down without breaking it. I've got to clean the entire back of it here and get it smooth. So I'm gonna have to get all that. That is indeed something like cardboard. I've got to get all that off. You can see what a mess all this is. I'm not going to bore you with ripping out all that insulation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2x4s in here in place of these 2x2s. Actually, those are like 1x2s. You can see what I have here. I've already scraped out the insulation. It's black. I expect that a lot of that is mold. I've been wearing a mask. I actually sprayed this right here on it. That's the only thing I could think of that had bleach. I'm going to have to do some work up on the top to the roof truss up there on each corner, and also replace a small piece of plywood on each corner. This is the back side of the paneling inside. This is in a closet on each side of the bed on the inside. It's soft. Down here, it's just pretty much rotted out. This part below the storage compartment right there is really underneath the camper in the framework. This board here on the corner, I got to tear that out and put a new one in there. I'm going to replace that bottom board right there. For insulation, I'm using 1-inch foam board, which will be as good as the insulation was that they had on here, because they didn't have insulation behind like this panel or that panel. They didn't have it behind this board here, which I don't have any idea what the purpose of that is. There's nothing behind it. But we've had drought conditions for the last 4 weeks. No real chance of rain, and you see what's happening to me. I'm going to insulate it using this foam board. This is 1 inch thick, so that'll give me a 1/2 inch space between this and the paneling on the inside. Okay, now I have the insulation done. Got all the wires sticking out where they're supposed to go for the light. Next, I'm going to cover this with some 1/4 inch plywood. I think I came up with a pretty clever way of marking all the light holes, the clearance light holes, and the windows holes. What I did is just laid the plywood underneath this piece of fiberglass here. All I got to do is go around and mark these locations, and that'll tell me where to cut. All right, that's got all the plywood except for the very top up there. I'm gonna do that next, but just wanted to show you something. I put a 2x4 all the way up right here. That's where the ladder is gonna mount, so there'll be a good solid mount on both sides of the legs for the ladder. You can see how bad this corner is up here on the roof. The plywood's completely gone, disintegrated. It's settled in probably a 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna have to replace all that plywood right there in this corner and also on the other corner. Here's another view after I've got the roofing material peeled back. It's a pretty big rotten area there, so I gotta tear all that out. Okay, here's an update. I have the wet insulation pulled out. I thought I had it stopped leaking, but I guess I didn't, because it was still wet in there. Maybe it never dried out, I don't know. But I've replaced that top plate over there where it was so rotten. I've got everything cleaned out. I'm going to insulate it. Here it is after I've got the plywood back on there. It's an odd cut because I just cut the rotted stuff out, but still it's pretty solid because I used a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. I washed off the back of the old roofing, and I'm going to use some contact cement to lay this piece back down. Then I'll go over the joints with Eternabond tape. There is the repair. It's much better than it was before. I've got a nice solid spot for both ladder legs to attach to there, and then I'll go around those with the Eternabond tape as well. I said previously that I thought that they had attached the thin cardboard to the studs and then glued the fiberglass covering to that. I now take that back and believe what really happened is they glue the cardboard to the fiberglass all together as a unit, and then when they put it on the wall, the things that holds it flat are the windows, the access panel, and the corner trims. At this point, I have the back fiberglass cleaned up. I used an 80 grit sandpaper with an electric orbital sander over there and went over the whole thing. I've got all the loose stuff off. The middle part there between the windows had not gotten wet, so it still adhered really well. So anyway, it's cleaned up and ready to go. Okay, I've got most of the caulking cleaned up. I'm still gonna go back and do a little bit more. Now I'm removing whatever this black stuff is off the back window. I guess it's the sealant, but it's really not doing any good. I've put spacers in here to hold the window up the right height to where it's supposed to be. Okay, I'm gonna go inside. Well, I have the window in now. You can see where the silicone squished out a little bit. I'll go back and trim that all away. And then I'm also gonna use another sealant to go all the way around this thing. This is the piece of trim that goes across the top. The most time-consuming thing is cleaning up all the old caulking and stuff that's on there. On the back side, they use this stuff, it's like some sort of plumber putty or something that's dried out. I have all the trim pieces cleaned up now. The lights and everything. They should be ready to install now. I have the roofing material pulled over and stapled down now. Okay, this is the compartment storage frame here for the storage door. There was no sealant on this at all. This white caulking is something that holds the two pieces of frame together. It had nothing to do with sealing it. The only sealant it had was right around this edge here. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a bead of silicone right here on the flat face and put it in there, and it should be sealed really good. This is the edge that laps over the side. Here's the way the ladder wound up. It is 100 times better than it was. Here's the way I did the Eternabond. I wrote it all the way over the back into the channel here where the little plastic strip normally goes to hide the screws. And then I caulked the seam across here. It's a really nice look, and I guarantee it's not going to leak. Of course, I've got the lights caulked in as well. The ladder is stronger than it's ever been, mainly because it's attached to 2x4s that run the full length there. Well, that's going to complete this video. It turned out pretty well. It took me about 5 or 6 days, which is a little bit more than I expected, but it turned out so much better than the way it was. If you saw anything in this video that you found helpful to you, or it was just entertaining in some way, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, subscribe, and tap that bell icon so you can be made aware of my future videos. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it.